originally in Spanish, between 2019-2020. Four large groups of Egyptians, followers of Akhenaten, left Egypt. One on foot to Sinai. Another one with Akhenaten and Nefertiti left for Italy, and it is the foundation of Rome, where Romulus and Remus, the legend, is nothing more than the story of Enki and Enlil revolted. It is here that Rome is founded as a control or command center for the reptiles who are there to this day in the Vatican. Another group arrived on the shores of southern Spain, right in the delta of the Ebro River, a few meters from you in Barcelona. Even today, there are traces of ship burials there. These are the ships I'm talking about. There are ships there, archaeological sites of ship graves, more characteristics of Vikings, except that these are Egyptian.
Tarragona is the capital and was an imperial city in the Roman Empire.
Yes, by contact between these two groups that I am telling you about now. The last group reached the coasts of Ireland and Scotland, mainly Scotland. This is because the origins of many of the people of Egypt, mainly the human royal bloodlines, came from Ireland, because that's where the survivors of the flood, survivors of Ireland, came to take refuge. Ireland in the roots of the word means lucky land. From there comes the concept of the Irish and luck in general as the four-leaf clover, because they were lucky that the region was not submerged by the flood. Also, Scotland is known as Highlands. But if you look at the mountains there, they are not that particularly high, quite the contrary. This name is because they were the highlands as opposed to the flooded ones. The Egyptians with rank, with pedigree, nobility, were the ones who decided to go as far as Ireland and Scotland to look for their origins. Meritaten, if you look at her face, does not look anything like Akhenaten or Nefertiti, with long calves and long cranium. By the way, of what they say on Wikipedia about her, almost nothing there is true. I am aware of what is said, but it differs from what someone who was there would tell you.
It looks like you a lot.
It is me, Robert. The similarity is uncanny. I have goosebumps. I've always told you that I jump in time. Sand clock, remember? It's logical that there are traces of it. Wow. Another question. Elohim of Pleiades have long skulls. Yes, Gosha, although they vary as well. They are among the species called Homo capensis, but I still haven't gotten to the part about what Meritaten did. The Exodus was not a single moment. It is also logical to assume that it did not happen all in one day when this many people move. The last two ships, or groups of ships, to leave were those that would reach the coasts of Catalonia and Scotland. With Akhenaten and Nefertiti leaving on the first ships, or groups of ships that arrived in Italy, Rome, Egypt was left without a ruler. I, as Meritaten, was placed by Ramses II as Queen of Egypt, although it was only for a short time, a few years. Meritaten is considered as one of the queens that, although recognized by modern archaeology, tends to be forgotten. Obvious reason, considering who controls modern Egyptology. I attempt to return peace and harmony to Egypt after the Akhenaten Nefertiti period. But after 9 years, and with peace mostly restored, and with plans of the last Egyptian exodus, that of nobility and royalty, for the search of their origins in Ireland and Scotland, I, as Meritaten, with the knowledge of Sandcloak that I had, found myself in the need to accompany that expedition, because I could foresee that they would encounter problems later, as I was convinced that another civilization was being planted. Remaining in Meritaten's place in Egypt, Ramses II. We left the Nile Delta, went around Spain and Portugal, passing Gibraltar, myself as navigator, and arrived in Ireland. First, where some of the ships of the fleet stayed, south of Ireland. There are more archaeological sites there of Egyptian ships of size and type identical to those found in the delta of the Ebro River in Catalonia. And the last ships arrived at what is now the west coast of Scotland. But then it wasn't Exodus. You went there because you wanted to supervise what they are doing there, yes? Yes. It's part of the Exodus, and it's not, depending on how you look at it historically. What I would list as a post-Exodus expedition, because it was 9 years later, and because the mentality was very different, the mentality of the people on the expedition. This is where the Celtic culture was founded, or is founded. In Scotland, there is the tomb of Meritaten, and it is true. There lies Swaruu 8. But you didn't die there. As I said before, I was Meritaten 2 times. This time, I did it all over again, with knowledge of what would happen, including my murder, because it was.
What did you die of?
Knife wounds.
Who killed you?
More space soap opera, because there is still a lot more. Just that the second time I was Meritaten, I anticipated it, and that's why I'm still here. It was another incarnation or another twist of the same. Understand that it's my job as Sandcloak. These things happen, and it is only natural, especially in this case, when you want to straighten out a world in trouble, Earth. The Celts ran an advanced holistic society, based on respect and communion with the earth. All Druidic and Bardic concepts are stellar concepts. They took the Vatican Druidic concepts to build their Catholic Christian religion around. And the parts that did not serve them or were dangerous for them because they contradicted their interests were destroyed. The Church destroyed the Celts, the worst genocide in the history of the earth, destruction of an entire advanced culture, hundreds of thousands dead, all erased from history. If you look for official information of the Druids, you will read that they left nothing written. This is a lie. They erased everything and have taken it to the Vatican. Those who call themselves today the Cabal have lost much. They suffered the great loss of Egypt. That is why it is what they desire now, the world, because Egypt was everything to them and they have lost it. That is what they desire, the world, to then invade other star systems. That is why the world is not enough. I know this is too much, but there are still gigabytes of information that I have not passed on that tie things together. You must know where the current conflict comes from. It comes from Egypt, but it has roots even further back, as you know. It's the old, eternal struggle of good versus evil. Wow, okay. At this point, I have an important question. Akhenaten Elohi, Elohi Pleiades. So, if the Akhenaten was evil and it was from the Pleiades, how is that possible? This is a very important point. On Earth, and more with the New Age, it is thought that there are positive races and negative races. That the Pleiadians and the Sirians are good, and the Draconians and the Maitreys are bad. It is not exactly as it is painted. There is conflict and duality here too, but it doesn't operate in the same way. It's all more complicated, sometimes more subtle. I mean, just because you are from Taygeta, you are not automatically good, nor because you are Draco, you are bad. There are interests, intrigues, everything is intertwined. There are negative Taygetans and good Draconians. It's all very complicated. It is not as easy as viewing an entire race as something good just because they are Pleiadians, as an example. You have to look at the actions of each one. The positive depends on the people, not their race. You yourselves have seen how there has been friction here among the fleet. It happens here too. Generalizing as a species, there are no negative races in the Pleiades. But I cannot say that all people of those races are positive. I understand. And something else. For what purpose have Akhenaten come to Earth, establishing their new cult and trying to suppress other stellar knowledge that was on Earth? Why was he against that? For power and dominance. Their agenda is to take over the entire Earth and then expand to other places. But they were quietly in the Pleiades already. I would say that really quiet ones never came out of there. They just used the quiet ones as masks to achieve agendas. Retake the Earth for the reptiles as they had lost it with the intervention of Tiamat and the flood. Before Tiamat, they reigned in Atlantis. Remember that all this is post-Tiamat and post-flood. 10,000 years BC to the present day. Before the flood, the Usungal and the Naga reigned in Atlantis and were forming what today are the Kingu. There were also Lyrians, mostly under reptilian control, called Homo Atlantis. Keep in mind that we are talking about a corporation, those who form the Cabal today, not a race. Many races working together for a common purpose. Among them, in the beginning, there was Akhenaten, who was Elohim, Pleiadian, yes. Are the Elohim still working on this agenda, or are they peaceful now? Because it has been mentioned that they are very wise and peaceful. They are peaceful today. I can't know what each one of them is doing, but generalizing, they are. So, they have already forgiven the Exodus? They have not forgiven the Exodus, It hurts them very much to this day, and it is motivation behind everything they do. It is part of the war, their revenge for the loss of Egypt. But do you mean the Cabal in general or the Elohim? Because you said they are peaceful today. No. The revenge comes from the Cabal Corporation, not the Elohim. The Elohim only regard what their compatriots have done as something isolated, not as an agenda of an entire race, of their race. As a race and civilization, they dissociate themselves from those deeds. They don't take responsibility for an isolated group of them. What is today known as the Cabal, being founded back then, the Elohim are not seeing that as something that affects them there at home in the Pleiades. The Elohim race and culture doesn't care that those were Elohim as well. They dissociate themselves from the problem. They have nothing to do with it. It was just some isolated members of their race. Just as the High Council of Taygeta dissociated itself and would dissociate itself when a bad Taygetan would do something in an isolated way. It is the responsibility of that person, not Taygeta. Okay, wow. It strikes me that the cause of all this, as you say, were those Stellars making reptilian deals. Or that they had a participation in that. Right, with the reptiles and Maitre and Malakak and who knows who else.
And why not go to Venus instead of Earth?
Because Egypt is on Earth, and that is what they want. They are esoterically driven. Egypt is the real holy land for them. It is the key to dominate the universe as they believe. This idea goes back to the 3 stars of Triangulum that we were talking about earlier. Egypt is where you jump to other planes through the pyramids, and because it is where their gods arrived from Triangulum and the great portal of M33. Who was really the first in Egypt? Egypt was Federation, from where it was intended to return the earth back to being progressive and peaceful. That's why so many stellars in Egypt, because they were guides for the native population of Homo Atlantis.
And do you think that the Vatican will ever release all of the information that it has on the Druids?
No. The Cabal must be thrown out first. Then the history of mankind will be released, because it is mostly there in their vaults.